Hey everyone, Reaper here again with yet another discussion video. I'm making a couple of these in the same day since I have the time. Little Reaper's asleep, so no one's banging at the door. Not yet, at least. So, what's the topic of this video? The topic is how have your comic book collecting habits changed over the years? And that's the topic more or less. I think this is mainly for, well, I don't want to say it's mainly because that's maybe not necessarily the case, but I would think that a lot of people that have been collecting for a long period of time may be able to answer this question a little bit more easily than those that just got into the hobby within the last few years. But I'm sure there are people out there that just got into the hobby a few years ago. Their collecting may have changed too. So naturally, I'll start with me. I've been collecting on and off for 2 decades, and there's definitely been a change in how I collect. In the beginning, when I first started, I had very little money, and I knew I couldn't get some of the bigger books. Now, obviously, the bigger books back then, as they are today, were pricey, but they were nowhere near as pricey back then. And that makes sense, right? Every time you go back, the bigger books of today were maybe not as expensive as they were yesterday, and so forth. But no matter what, I couldn't get myself an Amazing Spider-Man #1 as much as I wanted to. So that was difficult. So with that being said, I tried to collect, books that just came out. I was collecting a lot of Maximum Carnage stuff and all those other things. But for me, I was more interested in collecting runs. I liked the idea of having Spider-Man 2099 start a run. Try to get I didn't have #1, then I went and got #1, and I needed numbers 2 and 5 and 8, and then I started collecting from 13 on. I couldn't have an Amazing Spider-Man run like that, but I wanted to have a Spider-Man 2099 run. That made me feel good. And other series too. Oh, maybe it's hard for me to get Spectacular Spider-Man run, but maybe I could have a Web of Spider-Man or just Spider-Man run. So that's what I was really into back then. Of course, I wanted back issues too, and I flavored my collection with a bunch of those. But I was really into collecting runs. Now we flash forward to the present. I don't find collecting runs as fulfilling as it once was. As I've gotten older, and I think a lot of people probably a lot of people feel the same way, I have a lot of books that I just don't want anymore. And, some of them are high dollar books, not many, but a lot of them are, just regular common books I just wish I could just get rid of. A lot of them were runs. And I know some elitists out there might say, well, what, because it's not valuable? No, it's not because it's not valuable. Not everything that's good has to have value. It comes down to the point where I say, maybe it's time to cull the collection. The way Patrick calls his collection. He calls his collection to buy the books that he's always wanted. Why can't I do the same thing? Why can't you do the same thing? Those are some of the ways that I've changed my collecting. Sure, a lot of them are very nice, when you have your runs and all that stuff, and great stories, great art, great memories. But for me, it's come down to a point where I'm like, I'm tired of the clutter. And, I'm not saying that the walls are caving in on me, no. But I'm just saying, like, sometimes I'm like, it's time to perform surgery on this collection and cut out all the fat and keep the things that are really meaningful to me, whether it's because of value, whether it's because of an artist, cover, nostalgia, whatever. And the other things that you haven't even thought about in years, maybe it's time to cull them. So that's how my collecting attitude really has changed. Like I said earlier in the video, I couldn't get the bigger keys when I first started out. Well, for a few years I couldn't get them. Now I can. and I could get them more easily by culling some of the collection, and that's what I'm going for. I like having the bigger keys, and they all don't have to be first appearances or anything like that. They can be books that, you know, you may like them because of the cover, the artist. Maybe it's because you had a beat-up copy when you were younger. Like I had a beat-up copy of X-Men #1, a coverless copy, and the back wrap was ripped off. Now, X-Men #1 is a big book, but I was also a big-time X-Men fan. So why wouldn't I get rid of like a box or two of comics that just don't really have much meaning to help pay for an X-Men #1? It doesn't make sense to me. That's how sometimes our attitudes change over the years. I mean, there are people that have gotten into this hobby just for the sake of making a profit, turning out a buck, and that's fine. You know, and they may only want to collect a certain amount of books. I know some collectors that only have maybe 2 or 3 dozen books that they feel are only worth keeping in their collection because of what they are. They won't go outside that because they feel that other books are not worth having. I mean, like I said, that's them. You know, we are all different and stuff like that. It's some runs I like to keep. For instance, I've changed my definition of run. Well, I like Uncanny X-Men. Does that mean I have to have Uncanny X-Men 1 through whatever the hell they're on? I don't know. No. I like the Silver Age. So for me, a run, the way I see it today, would be X-Men #1 through 66. I mean, for me, it would really be X-Men #1 to like 150, you know. But those are shorter runs and satisfying runs. They're not all first appearances and all that stuff. There's a lot of great stories in there, a lot of great writing. You know, latter part of it, latter part of that collection. You know, after you know, late 60s. You know, the Neil Adams run I thought was really good from, I think, what was it, X-Men 50 something to the end, and I thought that was a pretty good run when the Sentinels came back. That was great, and it's quite affordable too. It really is. So, you know, it gives you a lot of joy collecting stuff like that and having that in a run. Also with today, you know, I know there's a lot of speculation. There's always been speculation in books. I've never been really that good at it. But, you know, for me, there are times if I could pick up a double of a certain book that I would sell at a later period, I would do it. Now, how is that, you know, what does that mean? How does that may show change in your collecting? Well, years ago, I would never do that. I would never buy doubles. Why would I buy a double? I already have one. That was my thought pattern. It's pretty silly to think that way, but that's the way I thought. So if I see a pretty good book that I want for my collection, but it's a book that could probably maybe bring a return in a couple of years, long term, I'd buy a double as long as I don't overpay for it. So I've been doing that as of late. I've been buying a couple doubles. Not a lot. Not a lot. I'm not too obsessed with that right now. But that's just how my collecting habits have changed when it comes to buying books, when it comes to runs, when it comes to buying high dollar books or books that are high dollar that I could get cheap and maybe sell at a later time to help fund higher dollar books. I think we all do that for the most part. You know, it's a lot of fun in that. It's a lot of fun. You're still a collector, you know, at heart. You still enjoy collecting, and you know, you do a little flipping on the side to keep that hobby going. So how are some of your collecting habits changed, if they've changed at all? Maybe some of you out there, you've been the same since you started collecting 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it is. How have your collecting habits changed, if they've changed at all? Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care.